Hello, welcome back. It is week 92 on Out on That Line. I'm Geoff with my co-host Alex. As always, Alex, how you doing this week, buddy?
I'm doing pretty well for a guy who's broadcasting next to a big litter box full of cat shit, so, you know.
Well, hey, we all have our things we have to fight through, but I think that's what's going to make this episode even more special.
I think so, yeah. I think if there were a week that my office were to flood, this is the one to do it.
This is absolutely the one to do it. I think the mood matched that perfectly with this album.
Absolutely. The overwhelming sense of ennui is pervasive over here at Casa Cat Shit.
Well, this week we're going to do another of our kind of classic album picks. So this week it's going to be Mazzy Star's 1993 album, So Tonight That I Might See. Now, a lot of you may not know who Mazzy Star is or don't think you know who they are. But there's a couple songs, Fade Into You and Into Dust, that are two like big time Mazzy Star songs that especially Fade Into You that you may have heard. So do we want to hop right in to some Mazzy Star?
Let's do it.
Give the people what they want.
Let's do it.
Yeah. So this is going to be a big time, exciting, really positive, optimistic episode. And I really feel that way because that's exactly the kind of band that Mazzy Star was. Now Mazzy Star is really just two people. So it's David Roback and Hope Sandoval. Hope Sandoval being the vocalist, David Roback kind of being the, music behind the scenes. I don't think neither of them made a big effort to be in the public eye. Hope Sandoval was very outspoken about the fact that she got very, very nervous performing for people. Like it was not something that she was comfortable with. Which is a real shame because the music for me, I love Mazzy Star and I love this album. Full disclosure, spoiler alert, we'll get into what you think about it in a little bit here. But they started out and they really, just a band of the time, you had Elliott Smith, you had, Alice in Chains, you had all these, what you might consider kind of emo music, very emotional music. You went from the extreme excess of the 80s, the girls, all this kind of stuff. And then the 90s hit and you had a lot more introspective options as far as what you had available to you. And some of the most introspective and some of kind of the most downer music that came out was from Mazzy Star. They were typical, they're kind of known for being that shoegaze type of band, and you can hear my co-hosts in the background here, I'm sure. So apologies if those four little pooches I think combined weigh about 70 pounds, but their voices, it's like a whole army. They really want to make sure that the people know that they appreciate Mazzy Star as well in this household.
I interpret this as an endorsement.
Yeah, that's exactly what I think it is. Because also a couple of my dogs are a little bit depressed, so it's no surprise that they do like Mazzy Star. So basically, 1993 was kind of the height of their popularity. So this album came out. So Tonight That I Might See, and it had the big ones on it. So it had Fade Into You and Into Dust. Those are kind of the two biggest songs from this one. And I think you have a very different kind of musical style between the two of them. Fade Into You is this very kind of lightweight, very nice kind of singer-songwriter sort of vibe. And then Into Dust is this almost very haunting sort of vibe. But they both have very similar messages, which is, I think, the strength of Mazzy Star is that the message that they deliver is never diluted. How they deliver it might change, but you always know what you're going to get with them. And that's some sort of kind of look on the more depressing side. Some people might look at a silver lining. Mazzy Star is going to look for that gray tattered lining in a lot of this stuff. And that's kind of the sense that I get from them. So why don't we get right into the songs now that we have a little bit of background here. And your first pick and the first song on the album is Fade Into You.
Yeah, I figured, like you said, this was the big one. Me not being a Mazzy Star guy, I'm a dream pop guy, classic dream pop guy, but my only real Mazzy Star exposure was Fade Into You and Look On Down from the Bridge, which I think is the last song off of Stop Looking at Me Swan or whatever that album is called. But those were really the only two Mazzy Star songs that I knew. I liked them. And I feel like we had to pick Fade Into You. Like, you got your picks in first. I'm like, oh, he didn't do Fade Into You. Okay. So I'll do that one because it's the first song on the album. This has been used in a billion movies since it came out, movies and TV. It's all over the place. And for me, what this one was, I would call it's what we call in screenwriting the promise of the premise, where in the setup, you get an idea of what this story is going to be about. And to me, you talk about like they were a very depressed band. I think that's true, but I think what was interesting to me, how I interpreted it, is it was melancholy, not misery.
Yes.
It's trying to find a beautiful angle to depression instead of just being angry. Like a lot of the contemporary grunge that was out at this time was the angry young man. I'm pissed off, fuck you. And not to trivialize that, but I just think this is a different flavor of that same kind of disaffected Gen X mentality. So to me, this song is really like the perfect distillation of what I thought the album was going to be. It went in a different direction than I thought it would. Like thematically, it held on to the melancholy thing. Musically, it went in a different direction than I thought.
Yes, and I think that's the biggest surprise people are going to get with this album is because you hear a song like Into Dust or Fade Into You, and you think you're going to know like everything that this album is going to do. And it does have, you are correct. I would say probably 60% of the album is things that are similar in sound and tone to Fade Into You. But we're going to kind of get into it. And I like that the songs that you picked, like your other two songs, are the ones that are going to be those different kind of curveballs for people when they come into this album. So I like that you picked those. The reason I love Fade Into You is it is a classic example of, it sounds like such a nice love song in that chorus, Fade Into You, and you're thinking like, oh, these people are finally just going to let go of anything holding them apart and fade together, is kind of that. If you look at it straight surface level, that's what you see. But then you read into the lyrics. I want to hold the hand inside you. I want to take the breath that's true. I look to you when I see nothing. I look to you to see the truth. So there's a lot of hope there. There's a lot of like, this person is my person. When I need stability, you're the one I go to for that. And then it gets into the second part of that. You live your life, you go in shadows, you come apart and you'll go blind. Some kind of night into your darkness colored your eyes with what's not there. And I think you go from this hopeful, like, oh, you're the one that I really like. And then when they get there, they realize that they're not ready for you, and I think that's it hurts to hear that. Cause I think we've all experienced that sort of thing at some point, in that kind of, it's not a rejection so much as them saying they don't like you. It's that they're just not capable of giving you what you deserve and need in that relationship. And it doesn't take away from the beauty of the song. It in fact adds to it when I realize that there's more to it than just it being a love song. There's a lot of love in the song, but it's not about this like peachy keen situation. And that's what I really like about Mazzy Star, is they get both sides of the coin very well.
And I really appreciate the way that Fade Into You is expressed. I like the way that it's delivered because it feels like a very intimate interior song. It's not a song, in my eyes, when I listen to it, the feeling I get is not that it's being sung to this person. It's being sung about this person in Hope Sandoval's head. The sound of the song is like very cosmic and very big. It feels like a big wide open space, but then paradoxically all of that is inside of Hope Sandoval's head. So it just kind of feels like she's letting the thought kind of out into the universe that's inside of her head. I know that sounds hippy dippy, but I think it's really cool that the song doesn't give a sense of confession. It gives a sense of introspection.
Yes. And I think Fade Into You is the prime example of your kind of entry into Mazzy Star. I think this is the best song to start someone out with. So if you're listening to this and you've never listened to Mazzy Star, start with Fade Into You. I think if nothing else, if you don't like the rest of it, like, it's a very agreeable song. And I think it lets you understand what Mazzy Star was about, and the fact that Mazzy, I don't think they were like chart topping number one hit kinds of artists. They were definitely in a certain scene and very popular within that. But I think because of the strength of songs like Fade Into You and Into Dust and Look On Down from the Bridge, it's like it's been able to last. Like it's almost like a cult following, because people appreciated what they did. And they were very unique in that. I mean, it was just a 2-person band, and you have a lot of that now. You have, Matt and Kim, the one that Pink did with She and Him or something like that. I can't, there's a bunch of those. Like the one that Zooey Deschanel did.
That was She and Him, yeah.
She and Him, yeah. Pink did another one with some other singer from another band or something. But there was a lot of those in those early 2000s and into the like 2010s. But it really started with this, where it's just like these two people had a vision and they got it out there. And I think it was that kind of very DIY sort of mentality that really represented what was the best about the music industry in the early 90s and the mid 90s, because you had the bands out of Seattle, that grunge scene. It was very do-it-yourself. Like it got, diluted when, kind of corporate rock took hold of it and everybody started trying to copy that. And you end up with like Creed and Limp Bizkit and all those like post-grunge sort of bands. But there was just such a purity in, I think, the creation in the industry during that time period. And I think Mazzy Star is such a perfect representation of why the 90s were such a great time for independent artists.
And to transition this into your first pick, Bell's Ring, it's dripping with 90s energy. It's so 90s it hurts.
Yeah.
I see it's technically a 2000s movie, but Ghost World with Thora Birch, I just see that same kind of like alternative, offbeat, disaffected 90s high school girl, and this kind of being an anthem for her. I would say for me, the nostalgia invoked is stronger than the emotions raised by the music itself. Like if this came out today, I think I probably would have dismissed it. But as a product of its time, as a time capsule, I really appreciate its ability to transport back to exactly what you're saying, a time when this kind of DIY, not at this point commercially viable aesthetic kind of rose up from the underground and reigned supreme. One really nice thing I can say for this is Roback's guitar is awesome on this one.
Yes. So that is, I think, the simplicity of Mazzy Star and the music, I think really it does not do a good service to how good the music is, and how kind of perfect all those instruments are when he uses, like when you in Fade Into You, it's this very like kind of like, I think he uses a wah pedal on the guitar. It's got this very like almost kind of whiny sound to the guitar. And there's all these just like kind of background layers. It's almost very orchestral in a lot of ways with kind of how it's put together. But then you get into Bell's Ring and it's more of a standard like kind of pop rock song with how it's structured. And I think the fact that he can go between those two things and create, go from creating this very layered, very shiny sort of package into something that's got a little bit more grit to it, something a little bit more anger to it. I love the difference between those two songs, and we go right into the first chorus. Bells ring into the night sounds like a mistress on a rainy night. It's automatically setting that scene. Like if you don't feel like you're walking down, a deserted city street in the rainstorm at night when you listen to Mazzy Star, then I think you're doing it wrong. Maybe you're not smoking enough weed. I don't know. But this song, like, it's just, I love it when they don't shy away from like just being that obvious. Sounds like a mistress on a rainy night. Hold your throne down together and see the light that goes away. It's just painting this scene that it's like you're alone here, and it's, there's still movement. It's not like you're stuck in this little hole of depression. It's bringing you through these steps. He spins inside my soul. It isn't true, but you follow. Just hold me down by the water. So it's moving you through these scenes and allowing you to feel these emotions along the way. Now, they never get like that descriptive. They're not dropping names. They're not dropping like a lot of information about very specific situations like we've had on with artists in the past. But I think it's, again, I love when they allow you space to put yourself into a song. And I think that's what they do really well, and especially on this one.
Yeah, the minimalist kind of open to interpretation lyricism is a big hallmark of dream pop. Like when we did Beach House, there was a lot of that, where they're not being overly obscure, but they're also not being on the nose. So it's very, very minimalist lyricism. It's not a lot of words. It's a lot of repetition, because again, it really is just trying to put forth a feeling more so than it is a message.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to get that specific, because it's, you know, the words are kind of like the muscles in a snake trying to help the song get along. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I think this is a good example of that. And like you said, it gives you major sad time vibes, but I guess you can say that of the whole album.
Yeah, it is. It is major sad time vibes on this album. So I apologize if you were having a rough week and I just dropped this one on you, because it's not going to help pull you out of any sort of depressive hole. But I don't know. I feel like maybe there's beauty in, you know, finding music that matches the emotions that you're having. So when you're feeling this way, Mazzy Star is perfect for that.
Yeah, and I've just been like insanely stressed out and frustrated. So it's been a lot of like just kind of off the wall, contempt ridden music.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, this kind of got me on a week where I was like not that deep in my feelings, unless the feeling was bitter rage. So
I should have sent you the Paleface album then.
I'd probably just be painting all my walls black and just bleeding out of my eyes. No, and I don't mean to be hyperbolic about like that, like the mood affected the enjoyment of the album. Not in that direction. It's not like I was too angry to enjoy this. I would have, I think, enjoyed this more had I been really depressed and able to imprint on it a little more. I'm not saying that's how everyone has to do it. I could just tell for me, like, well, this might have resonated a little more with me if I were more in this headspace.
Yeah.
Because when you're kind of like, again, I don't mean to be like, my whole week was shit. I've just been dealing with a lot of like random stuff. So when you're in that kind of energetic stick and move, like when's the next shoe going to drop kind of mentality, it's kind of hard to take a breath and kind of slip into this. Just no failing of the material. It's just kind of luck of the draw with how my life went.
Yeah. And maybe if you let me know what kind of, because we haven't picked the album for next week. So let me know how you're feeling around like late tomorrow or Friday. We're recording here on Wednesday, and then I'll try to pick an album that fits that. You know, if you're angry, maybe we go with a little like I Prevail or Slipknot or something like that. If you're feeling real happy, maybe we do a Harry Styles throwback or something, you know, so we can gauge it based on your mood, because we haven't picked anything yet.
Yeah, mood ring. I like it.
Yeah. Maybe that's how we should decide what albums we do.
Yeah.
Like if we're feeling happy, we do just happy songs. If we're feeling angry, it's just like, let's feed that beast, baby.
Yeah, I definitely I have found, we're getting way off topic, but in reaction videos, I found that's the way to go, is you kind of have to match your mood at the time. Because I did a reaction to Demi Lovato's Skin of My Teeth. And it was some of the most like outrageously mean, ruthless shit I've ever heard pass these lips in my entire life. And I got done and I went, this is unreleasable.
Yeah, I feel like it gets to a certain point. We can talk some shit, but I feel like if you go too hard in the paint on somebody that doesn't really have it coming necessarily, then it's good to have a second thought once in a while. We don't have to be totally... we don't have to have all the journalistic integrity in the world all the time.
Yeah, I don't want to dunk on the girl that sings to ghosts. I think I'll leave that up to Twitter. And I'll just politely walk away. If you can't say something nice, don't say nothing at all.
Yeah, that's a fair statement, because yes, Twitter will take care of that for you. Yes. You don't need to worry about that. They certainly will. Well, why don't we move on to another one of my picks? And this one is Blue Light. Now this one, I don't know, it just kind of rocks. That's all I really have to say. It's like you hear this one and you're just kind of like, okay, now I understand like more of a range of what they're capable of. I feel like the first probably 5 songs in this album does a great job representing that Mazzy Star isn't just Fade Into You. They're not just, super depressing lo-fi kind of music, they can, they're influenced by the same artists that Pearl Jam was influenced by, that, Alice in Chains was influenced by. So there, you do hear, maybe from a different angle, but you hear those same things represented here in this music, just maybe in kind of slightly different ways.
And I like this one. I like the weird kind of churchy organ element to it, and the bluesy flavor. I think the real, like the fear that I had a couple songs in is like, are we going to stay in this kind of rut the whole album? Are we even going to get anything? I was like, this is kind of all, in my mind, at risk of becoming the same song. And that is like, it's especially difficult because of their structure. They're like totally unconcerned with verse, chorus, especially on a song like this. I mean, this just like moves ahead without really getting out of its lane. And I'm totally cool with that. I prefer it more when it's Frank Zappa or like George Clinton's type stuff where it's movements, like not just Knee Deep, that song. You never want that to end. You're begging it to go back to some of the thoughts that it had. So that's just how I'm wired. But after a certain point, you listen to a song like this, and like the first time you listen, you're like, this is fucking 5 minutes long, and I just had a birthday listening to this. But then you're like, well, we're going to talk about it. I got to go back. I got to listen again. And like some of the scales fall from your eyes, and you kind of appreciate it for what it is. And it was a break from exactly what my problem was, which is like, well, the rest of this shit kind of sounds like after Fade Into You, these other like 2-3 songs were like kind of ran together for me. And this was a nice little twist.
So I get the sense that this album didn't really hit you at the, in the right mood. So I would say give it another shot, like this winter, like dead of winter, when things are like that seasonal affective disorder is like really kicking in strong. Throw this baby on there. See if it doesn't tickle the fancy a little bit more. But we'll move on to one of your picks. And this is one that I'm glad that you picked, because I was going to, but I was like, you know what? I'm going to leave, I think, the more interesting, fun ones, since I'm just so familiar with the album. I'm going to leave the more interesting, kind of fun ones and hope that you picked them. And you did. This is one of the ones that I was hoping you were going to take. It's called Wasted. Yeah,
Wasted. It was very, like, maybe more than any other song on the album, it was very unafraid to get kind of like out of pocket and weird with it. And to me, it kind of mirrored like the start of a hangover. You know what I mean? Because there's all these lines about like, I felt like I was wasted. And it's like this kind of come down from the realization, in my interpretation, it's a come down from the realization of someone who got smacked with the realization that all of her perceptions were wrong. This is not what I thought. This is not what I was led to believe it would be. So it's her kind of shifting gears. She's resetting her expectation and coming back from this headspace to the reality she can rely on, for better or worse. And it's reflected in that kind of like stumbling, disoriented guitar crunch that's going on. It's very appropriate for the mood. It's kind of a honky-tonkish sound. This one kind of like really came alive to me, and its beauty was in those little weird flare-ups, like, oh god, I might puke. Like it had that kind of feeling, like the guitar would kind of surge on you.
And this is, I think, where Mazzy Star is at their best. It's not necessarily just like this type of music, like where they involve more guitars. I think when they let themselves go like this, like they do on this song, and I think when they embody an emotion as well as they do on this one, I say emotion, but like the title is Wasted, and it has that like disjointed sort of feel to it. I think it's a really accurate way that you described it. It's like when that hangover is first like kicking in, and it's like you're there, but you're not. The brain is like, there's no sharp edges on your brain. Like everything's just kind of fuzzy, and I think it's a really accurate way to describe this one. This is one of my favorite songs on the album, and I think it's because it's not one that you expect. A lot of people, and I say the Fade Into You is the best gateway into Mazzy Star. It's the most digestible song that they do. It's a really, really good song, but it's nothing like Wasted. And I think when you get deeper into a band, you have to be okay with them doing much different things. It's like with Coheed, you listen to their first album, Second Stage Turbine Blade, and then listen to the newest one, Vaxis Part 2, and then you're not gonna know that that's the same band. Like, there's no way that you're gonna hear those sounds and be like, oh yeah, that's the same band. But if you listen to everything in between, you hear those progressions and you understand where those things are coming from. And I think with Mazzy Star, in order to appreciate Wasted at the same time as you're appreciating Fade Into You, is that you have to hear the rest of the album that fills in those gaps in between those two things. And I think Wasted does a great job at being that like classic 90s like rock song. And I think this is one that's like going to be in those, like, it could be in what's the movie, Mallrats, and like those old like classic 90s like mid 20s kids trying to figure it out sort of movies. Like, Mazzy Star is, I feel like, the music version of those movies.
I could see that, especially with something like this. This has Kevin Smith written all over it.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that as a dig. He sucks now, but he used to be one of my favorites. I am looking forward to Clerks 3, though. I really like the guitar and the drum work on this one, and it reinforced this idea to me, which is exactly what you're saying. You have to hear every song in the context of every other song as a complete object, the album. Mm-hmm. You have to hear every song in the context of the album. And this was one of those songs that was really good at drawing me in and giving me something a little different once I had been lulled into a false sense of security.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So we want to move on to Into Dust. Now, this is the one I was like, I left Fade Into You hoping that you were going to pick that one. And to be honest with you, I was going to add that one if you didn't. I was going to be like, okay, we need to add that one to talk about it, because like, how could we not talk about that song? But I knew, I was like, I'm not going to take both Fade Into You and Into Dust. I'm going to leave one for you. But Into Dust this is my favorite song on the album. And I think because my favorite Mazzy Star song in general is Look On Down From the Bridge, it makes a lot of sense that Into Dust would be my favorite song on this album, because it is probably the most depressing song on here. It is absolutely wonderful for that exact reason. I mean, the misery that it forces upon you, I love it. I don't understand why I love it, but it just hits the right chord for me, and it is just a beautiful experience every time I hear this song.
Well, and again, the beauty really is in the melancholy, because if this was an exercise in pure misery, it would be completely insufferable. And I don't mean quality-wise, just emotionally. If it was just like that Hayley Williams album we listened to, that was just like 45 minutes of wallowing in misery. Mm-hmm. And I'm not to minimize anything she went through that went into that album. It's just like, woof, boy. So in a world where this was an album predicated on misery instead of melancholy, this would have been really tough. As it is, this song really demands your patience. It's very unadorned, and it just kind of keeps moving, but it goes on long enough and is consistent enough that you can kind of grasp on to the innate emotion of all the elements working together. So it's not overly complicated, it's not overly impressive, and by that I don't mean good. I mean like, wow, they're really doing a lot here. All the layered tracking. It's like, it's simple, it's a mood, it's introspective, it's philosophical, and that's kind of why it works, and it gives you a chance to latch on.
And I feel I want to read the lyrics so people can just understand the bleakness that we're dealing with here. So verse 1, and again, I think a lot of the beauty of these songs is how Hope Sandoval like does the melodies for these, and like the way it's like, it doesn't sound like other things that came out at this time. Like, she plays around with the melody. It keeps it very interesting. And so verse 1, still falling, breathless and on again, inside today, beside me today, around, broken in two, till your eyes shed into dust, like two strangers turning into dust, till my hand shook with the weight of fear. So it's just like, there's no other interpretation other than somebody's broken here. There's just something that isn't didn't go the way that they had planned on, and it has taken a big piece away from them. So verse 2, I could possibly be fading. That's my favorite line. And then the way she sings that line, I fucking love it. Fucking love it. It just hits me right in the heart, dead center every single time. So I could possibly be fading or have something more to gain. I could feel myself growing colder. I could feel myself under your fate. And it's just this person that is not in control of the things that are happening to them. And I guess you're in control as far as like you allow yourself to be in a situation like that, but they want so badly for this thing to work out, but it's just two strangers fading into dust. And it's just like such a depressing way to look at it. And there's no part of you that's like, oh, maybe things are going to work out, but it is not. Like there's just no hope in this. And I think it's beautiful for that reason.
Imagine if this had been the theme song for Friends. You know what I mean?
I wish.
It's got that same kind of like, so no one told you life was gonna be this way. Like, obviously that's like an upbeat, like, I'll be there for you. And this one is like, there's no one there.
Yeah.
There's no one there. We've all faded into dust. But again, what I appreciate is it's melancholy. So it's not self-pity. It's just like you can't stop thinking. And these thoughts are dark and they're sad. And you're not necessarily getting overly emotional about it, which is a weird thing to say about emotions. But there's like a sense of perspective to it, where you have to try to make something beautiful out of something like powerful suffering, because you're meant to feel happiness and you're meant to suffer. Mm-hmm. So you have to find some kind of beauty in both sides of that balance, or you'll go insane. So that to me is kind of embodied in this song.
Yeah, this is, I mean, if you're going to, so I know the objective part of me says Fade Into You is the entryway into Mazzy Star, but the subjective part of me knows that Into Dust is the way into Mazzy Star. Like, if you can't handle Into Dust, then you probably don't want to handle the rest of Mazzy Star. It's just great experience.
Yeah, with my limited exposure to Mazzy Star, I would say that's probably accurate. I would definitely hand someone Fade Into You first. I'm like, isn't this kind of neat? Kind of neat little song.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like a love song. Like,
right.
It sounds like a straight up, just like a beautiful love song. Oh, I'm going to fade into you. It's like I'm going to take down my walls and fade into you.
Yeah, it's like Born in the USA. You know what I mean? Everyone's like, oh, this song fucking rocks.
Yeah.
This is a patriotic anthem.
I feel like there's a lot of folks that do that.
Yeah.
And when I remember when I first started listen to that after I got engaged, and I was like, oh, this would be kind of a nice wedding song. Like, it's got a very, very nice, it's almost, I think it sounds in the same sort of key as like Paco Bell's Canon. So it's got that sort of wedding sort of vibe and sound. And then I read the lyrics and I was like, nope, not going to be the wedding song.
Yep.
For sure not. It's just, I feel like they hide that. It's like they're holding the magician. It's like, hey, look at my hand up here while I'm, doing something nefarious down here. That's Mazzy Star.
Yeah.
Like, we're going to sound bright and happy, but we're not.
We're all
really
nefarious
not.
And shit.
Yeah. So the album wraps up with Mazzy Star getting on their Bob Dylan shit. So the title track from the album, So Tonight That I Might See, is the finisher on the album. And I always like a nice little bookend. I love when the sequencing of the album, they use the kind of the callback to the title of the album with the last name of the song of the name of the last song on the album. I like that symbiosis. It's a really a good feeling for me. But this one is way different than anything else on the album. As different as Wasted is or Blue Light is from the rest of the stuff, this is even more different. Like, goes even further.
So when in doubt, when we're doing an album, I pick the first song and the last song. Mm-hmm. Because it's like you said, in their placement, if you look at the album as a repeatable experience, as a cycle, they're right next to each other, the beginning and the end. It's like poetry, it rhymes. It has to like, they have to be closely linked in like theme and flavor. What you come in with, you kind of wrap up with. It's not a hard and fast rule. I just think like that's when you kind of realize somebody's locked into something that means something to them, which is absolutely the case on this album. I think it also kind of perfectly demonstrated to me like what happens from the promise of the premise to the end of this, to this point. And I learned that Mazzy Star is like deeply, it's like a mantra. I don't like, repetitive sounds like it has a negative connotation to it, but it is definitely like, you know, Om Shanti. Like it's one of those, I'm just mixing up religions like crazy right now. But it's one of those, it just kind of keeps repeating and affirming like that. So you have to get used to that. Because I'm used to Zappa and Mitski and all this other shit that's just like, oh, look at this extremely obscure old instrument I found. I think I'll do a 3-minute solo. Binky, bunky, bonky. So you kind of have to settle into what the vibe is here. And this was kind of this like psychedelic exit interview for the album.
And I think there's two like camps with making albums. Like with Mitski and Frank Zappa, it was not, you know, I guess with like Joe's Garage, obviously there was like a thought process and a continuity behind everything. But Mitski is a great example of like the albums have, you know, they're thematically, you know, they have a kind of a continuous thread that goes through them all. But sonically, it always sounds different. You know, so Mitski is like, you could take any song off of any album and you could put it on another one, you know, and there's enough, like, she doesn't have, it's not going to sound that out of place. Like, but a band like Mazzy Star, and I think there was a beautiful time in the 80s and 90s when artists seriously tried to put together a whole album experience. It wasn't just like, let's have some singles. Like when the Beatles came out, it was like, you got your singles, but they weren't focused on like having a full album all together until they got to like Revolver, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. You know, they didn't start focusing on that stuff until later in their career. And again, I don't think there was a lot of bands that even got to that point until much later. You know, there was people like Frank Zappa that had some ideas, and, you know, an album might sound similar to itself within that album. But I think in the 90s, I'm probably just biased because I love these bands, but bands like Mazzy Star, Alice in Chains, Pearl Jam, like those albums were built as an experience as an album. Like it wasn't meant for you just to go in there, like grab a single and listen to it. It was like they had singles that came out of it just because they were good enough to get play on their own. But the point of them was not to have a hit song, so to speak. It was to create a full album experience. And I think that's why I love So Tonight That I Might See as an album. And that's why I love this song at the end of it, is because it's so different from everything else. It's just like, we have the rest of these thoughts. We've really only got so much more space on this CD, or maybe we only have so many more ideas for the music, but we need to get these ideas out there. If you're looking at the lyric pages for each of these songs, when you're going through, like, everything looks very simple, very easy. And then you get to this song and it's just like, bam, block of lyrics. Like there was a lot of thought process to go into this last song. And I think it's meant to kind of jar you out of the feelings that you've had through the album so far and make you realize that, like, this is the end. Now it's time to go back to the beginning. You know, and I think it's a great observation that you had where it feels like it's a circle. You know, it's a link. You know, it's not like a beginning to end and then you just move on, never look at it again. It's the last song makes you think of the rest of the album. You know, it makes it a cycle and makes you connect all those dots all together. And for me, there's not a ton of albums that do it like this one does, with such a different song at the end. You would think it'd be a problem, but it's not. It actually enhances what the rest of the album is because of it.
And this one could never have been the single off the album.
No.
Which speaks to your point, which is this was not designed to pluck singles from it. It's designed as a complete thought. And like we said earlier in the episode, every song in the context of every other song is important in this style, in the way that Mazzy Star is trying to execute this. Fade Into You would be the most accessible pick. We also talked about that. But I applauded this one. So Tonight That I Might See, this final song, for staying in unity with the concept and then doing something wildly different right at the end. It wasn't necessarily like a pleasurable experience for me. It kind of paddled in circles a little bit. But I applauded a lot of a big thing on this album is I applaud the effort, even when the individual effort maybe didn't deeply resonate with me. I would never be like, well, this was bad. This is a bad song. It's just one of those things that, like, it hits you center mass and it just kind of winged me.
Yeah. That's a really great way to put it.
Do what I can over here.
Yeah.
Catch it, Ellie.
Yeah. So I don't know if people could tell, but I'm going to say stream it. I fucking love this album. If you love depressing music and you want to feel a little sad sometimes, do yourself a favor. Do like I used to do. Just lay down on the floor in between two big ass speakers and just play this album all the way through. And just lay there, put your phone away, and just sit with yourself. Just absorb it, listen to it, and just let your mind do what it's going to do.
You will float away on a river of your own tears.
I am not responsible for any unalivings that people do on themselves after that advice. I just want to say that legal disclaimer.
Well, I am also, on the heels of a legal disclaimer, going to say stream it. Again, my interpretation of it was I'm probably not in the right emotional headspace. I feel like there is a if life is a cycle, much like the album is a cycle, it's inevitable that I'm going to hit that point where it's like time to put my head between the speakers. I'm having a hard time. And in that moment, I will almost certainly go back to this, and I think it's going to hit way different because my experience with this was not enough to write it off and be like, fuck this. I was frustrated with myself being like, really, this should be right up your alley. Why are you not getting into this? So I think it was just, I'm a victim of circumstance. The album is a victim of circumstance. And to that end, I'm going to hardly recommend it, and I'll reconvene with you guys once I've had the proper experience.
Yes. So we'll make sure, remind yourself. Like, I don't know if you got to wear a mood ring and link it to your phone that when it turns a certain color, put on Mazzy Star. I think you just need to, like, set that trigger for yourself. But it's really, I don't know. Go listen to this album. If you haven't heard of Mazzy Star before, go listen to this album. Do yourself also a favor. Go watch possibly the best placement of any song ever in television history, with Rick and Morty and the placement in the Rick Potion number 9 episode where they use Look On Down from the Bridge from the album. And I think it's called Among My Swan is the album that one's off of. That's their second and I think final album. Maybe they came out with some other ones, but they were not a very long-lived band. But Look On Down from the Bridge in that episode of Rick and Morty is possibly the best placement of any song in any television or movie that's ever taken place.
Yeah, and that was the first time I heard it, and it really reaches out in the context of what's happening in the episode, really kind of reaches out and grabs you by the nards.
Yes, and that's so you need to get yourself in that space where that song connected with Rick and Morty in that moment. That's the space you need to get into to connect with this album.
Well, I'll tell you what, you go ahead and get a hold of Girlfriend of the Pod and convince her to break up with me. And I'll be ready. just
this is just a test, Make it sound serious, but it's not serious.
Yeah, scare the shit out of him within an inch of his life, so he can appreciate this.
Maybe we'll just do it at my bachelor party. We'll just do some ketamine, get ourselves in a nice little K-hole, and listen to this one.
Little medical grade. That is actually a funny anecdote. When I was in college, I won't say the guy's name, but we were hanging out in one of these buildings. Not a guy I talked to a lot. And he was like, so what are you up to this weekend, Alex? And I was like, oh, it's probably going to have some people over, do a little drinking, standard college fare. And he goes, nice. I have some medical grade ketamine, so I will be spending my weekend on the rug in my apartment. Stop by if you feel like it. I was like, I'm absolutely going to come over and see that 100%.
Yeah, I'm going to come over and try that. Let alone see it. I want that experience, my friend.
Yeah, you can't get in there and look at the ride and go, no, I think I'll just watch it.
No, I'm no spectator.
No, man.
Don't
Ketamine
ever
is not a
accuse me of that.
spectator sport. That's another T-shirt we're going to make. Ketamine is not a spectator sport.
That is beautiful. That might be our best slogan of all time on this show.
What was the other one you came up with? It was the method is innovation or something like, or the innovation is the method or something like that.
It's some bullshit. Yeah.
Incredible. Our menswear line is going to be amazing.
You're going to like the way you look. I think.
I guarantee it.
That's our slogan. We're Men's Warehouses. I guarantee you're gonna like the way you look. I guarantee it. Or is that Joseph A. Bank? I don't know. I don't care. But ours is you're gonna like the way you look. I think.
Maybe. Maybe.
Well, that's a pretty tight little package of an album, tight little package of an episode here. Do you have anything else that you want to tell the people about, Alex?
The YouTube. I don't know if you guys know this, but the YouTube is popping off. The channel is growing by leaps and bounds, not unlike the titular blob from the film The Blob. It consumes all that it touches. The YouTube is really popping off. We got some fun stuff. We have our reaction videos. There'll be a new one up by the time you guys hear this. We've got every episode of the podcast. We have our single series. I can tell you now, since we've set it in stone, that Thursday, September 8th, so as you're hearing this, Thursday, Tanner and I will be sitting down to record a brand new episode of On the Record.
Oh my gosh, can you tell the people what it's about, or are we keeping that one under wraps?
Oh, I think we've talked about it before. He and I are putting on our truth snorkels and our fun flippers, and we are diving headfirst into Frank Zappa's "Chic Your Booty" in its entirety.
Oh baby, I feel like I don't know if we're owed some royalties by the Zappa family, but who else is talking about Zappa at this point?
Yeah, 50-year-old guys who swing through our videos occasionally are like, "It's so good to see a young Frank Zappa fan." I'm like, why? I know what your life is. You are a barber who lives alone with a really old pug.
Yeah, we may end up in the same place, but you don't have to jerk my chain and tell me you're proud of me for it.
Yeah, don't wish your life on me. How dare you?
Yeah, I'm going to end up there, but don't make it seem like it's a foregone conclusion, please.
And listen, you talk about artistic integrity and you'll stick with Frank no matter what. That's part of your identity. Guess what? That's true of me too, but I'm absolutely willing to dump that if someone says you're going to die alone. So just remember, there's no artistic integrity in fucking dying alone.
Never let it be said that we have any sort of artistic backbone on this show or journalistic backbone. We are as flexible as the money makes us, baby.
Listen, if they don't build statues to critics, then why be principled at all? Why ever pull your punches?
That's another T-shirt.
Yeah.
That's another T-shirt. Why be principled at all?
Done and done. Why be principled at all?
I feel like with things like that, if we really want to lean into that, we could pick up a certain kind of audience. They're very angry, and they had themselves a party on January 6th, if you know what I mean. But we could probably exploit the shit out of that.
Our good friends with the Pepe frogs. Yep. That actually reminds me, someone has to have had this idea, but I saw a book bag the other day that said the future is non-binary. And I'm like, I'd really like to make a handbag like that, except that is written in binary. Like 001101. I would really, really love to make that. So there you go.
I feel like the people that are the only ones that would be able to read it every single one of them will appreciate that shirt. So maybe once in your life when you wear that shirt or have that bag with you, the other person that you happen across that understands binary, they're going to really love that one.
They're going to approach you very aggressively in public and be like, I know what that means. And then they need to prepare for the wintry freshness of Mace.
Or they'll push up their glasses on a little higher on their nose and tell you, well, actually, this third one should be a 0, not a 1 if you really want it to be accurate.
And then they just rap to you in Klingon. And you back away slowly. So all of that was a pretense to say the YouTube is where it's at.
YouTube is popping, baby. We are cooking with gas over there. So make sure that you subscribe. Check out all those reaction videos. Alex has a gang of videos up there about Harry Styles. If you're a Harry Styles fan, I know there's a lot of you out there. So check those out because I think he does a good job picking some good Harry stuff. Let us know what else you want to hear. We're always open to suggestions. Like we'll go and find some stuff on our own if we don't feel like we're getting, something relevant suggested to us, but never feel like we're not seeing that stuff. So always make sure you leave a comment, subscribe, let us know what you want to hear. And Alex, do you have any closing thoughts here today?
I have absolutely nothing left to say.
Well, then until next time.